In the late 2000s, WWE was on a rapid decline in popularity. They were on top of the world with pretty much nobody to challenge them creatively, and through this, the company got stale as John Cena was placed on top despite fans desperately wanting the opposite. After all, why would WWE even try when there was nobody out there to rival them? TNA was second place in pro wrestling by a wide margin, New Japan was just barely hitting their stride, and Ring of Honor, as influential as it may be, was still a really small promotion at the time. But before CM Punk's pipe bomb reinvigorated the fan base,
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
WWE did try to artificially create some hype around its product. They would produce new concepts like the Championship Scramble match, as well as some odd pay-per-view experiments, and some of these would feature an outdated approach to its presentation, while others would bring in some odd booking choices that, in hindsight, still feel unbelievable. So, my name is Greece with Wrestleology, and today, let us take a look at a few of these pay-per-views to see what WWE's experimental programming was doing to try and capture our attention at the time. These are some of the odd WWE pay-per-views of the late 2000s. So, the first event I want to cover today is the Fatal 4-Way pay-per-view from 2010. Replacing the Great American Bash on the calendar, this show would be an odd but interesting time capsule into WWE's psyche at the time. While it features some of the most 2010 superstars in the company like Evan Bourne, a young Drew McIntyre, and the Hart Dynasty, the main selling point of this event was clearly its usage of Fatal 4-Way matches throughout the night. Hell, it was even the name of the event, a trend that only really started a year prior, as Extreme Rules was the first event named after its match type since the Royal Rumble. Yeah, WWE got pretty lazy around this time in its marketing department. But what about the matches themselves? How did this Fatal 4-Way experiment turn out for WWE? Well, following a few singles matches, yes, that's right, a Fatal 4-Way pay-per-view didn't even kick off the show. We got our first main event 4-man battle as defending champion Jack Swagger took on The Big Show, CM Punk, and Rey Mysterio. Yeah, we were in the thick of that forgettable reign of Swagger as World Heavyweight Champion at this time, with him failing to really capture people's attention on top of SmackDown following his Money in the Bank cash-in. I'm sure some of you even probably forgot that he was Mr. Money in the Bank at one point, but lucky for you, you can hear more about that in my recent video talking all about the history of the briefcase. But as for this match, guys like Rey Mysterio and a masked CM Punk did bring a level of intrigue to the bout. However, just as Punk looked to capture the gold, a surprise interference would take place in the form of Kane. Kane, after losing to Punk in a qualifying match on SmackDown, had begun his rampage on the roster following an attack on his brother. This attack left Undertaker in a vegetative state, unfit to compete for some time as Kane desperately searched for the man responsible.
Did you do it? No, we didn't do it.
Spoilers, it was Kane. But yeah, this was a pretty weird and forgettable chapter in Kane's never-ending rivalry with The Undertaker. Either way, for this bout, Kane took to the ring as he attempted to put Punk in a casket. That is, before Punk was saved by a straight-edge follower Luke Gallows before being chased off to the back by the Big Red Monster. Afterwards, Rey Mysterio hit the 619 on Swagger to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. But Rey wouldn't be the only new world champion walking out of Fatal 4-Way, because in the main event, John Cena defended his WWE title against Edge, Randy Orton, and Sheamus. However, the match soon fell apart after the recently debuting Nexus, running down to tear apart the top 4 competitors of the Raw roster. And in the middle of the chaos, Sheamus actually stole the victory by pinning Cena after a beatdown by the group before leaving the arena through the crowd. The show would come to a close as Cena laid in the middle of the ring, titleless and broken. And as he laid there, perhaps he was thinking to himself, how do I bury these 7 guys all at once? However, despite multiple interference spots, I actually think this pay-per-view was interesting in theory. After all, a Fatal 4-Way match is low-key one of the most underrated match types in pro wrestling. The competitors tend to create lull moments throughout the bout, allowing them to regain energy for big and exciting moments, while the other wrestlers battle with their energy now replenished. Sure, they can sometimes have this conveyor belt feeling to them, with guys constantly exiting and entering the ring, but the constant energy can create some exciting moments. Just look at the Intercontinental title match from Extreme Rules 2016. It's one of the most action-packed matches of the year, with everyone getting a chance to shine. Or a more recent example was the Four Pillars Fatal 4-Way match for the AEW Championship at Double or Nothing 2023. That match stole the show through not only the history of all four men, but also the non-stop energy of the match. So I don't think I would mind seeing another version of this event in WWE today, especially with the incredible wrestlers of WWE's main roster currently. I think there's a lot of exciting potential in this concept. But this wouldn't be the only specialty pay-per-view with promise around this time. A year prior, WWE held the only Breaking Point pay-per-view in its history. This show centered around the concept of its competitors forcing their opponents to give up with multiple submission matches, as well as an I Quit match that featured on the card. Now, personally, I think submission matches are really underused in pro wrestling. Just look at some of the greatest competitors in WWE history. Daniel Bryan, Bret Hart, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, and more all have proven their worth in the squared circle through their submission finishers. While a big out-of-nowhere strike like the Sweet Chin Music or an earth-shattering slam like the F5 may be an exciting burst of energy for the finish, a submission finisher allows superstars to tell a match-long story around a certain body part. If you have a figure 4 as your finisher, then every time you attack your opponent's leg, and I mean, what's more humiliating to your opponent? Uncontrollably knocking them out with a big strike or forcing them to quit due to the sheer pain that you've caused. It's a concept that isn't seen enough in wrestling, and with the added I Quit match between John Cena and Randy Orton, it's a concept that's played surprisingly well. Cena and Orton put each other through absolute hell. The hatred shown throughout really brought a level of intrigue to the bout, and that hatred actually showcases another deeper level of storytelling you can have in a match like this. While I mentioned the concept of a submission style match being themed around hurting a certain part of your opponent, there is that added sense that the punishment you need to inflict on your opponent is arguably more destructive than if you were just to cover an incapacitated man for the 3 count. After all, it's a lot harder to make a pro wrestler say I quit, I give up, than it is to simply knock them out. And that's why Orton and Cena put each other through so much in this match, with steel chairs, kendo sticks, and more all being used with both men unable to mutter the words I quit. Cena literally had to handcuff Orton's wrists together before applying the STF for Orton to say those words.
I quit, I quit!
He had to take every other possibility away from Orton to make him say it and win the WWE title. And speaking of John Cena as WWE champion, why don't we get to the pay-per-view featuring one of his weirdest title defenses with capital punishment. Sure, while this show wasn't centered around any sort of match stipulations like the 2 prior events, this show was themed around America. Hell yeah. And with it taking place in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., WWE really leaned into it with the promotion of the event. Even the poster is in the style of a political drawing, as it featured John Cena, Rey Mysterio, and Barack Obama, practically advertising that the president would show up. And holy hell, he did, kind of. Yeah, of course they couldn't get the actual president of the United States to make an appearance at the event, so they got an impersonator of Obama in Reggie Brown. He interacted with legends and superstars throughout the show, like Sergeant Slaughter, Santino Marella, and Booker T. And this kind of PG cartoonishness would be a pretty interesting send-off to WWE's more kid-friendly era, with this show being the final pay-per-view before CM Punk changed the wrestling industry with the pipe bomb. So on the show before CM Punk brought WWE into a more reality-based era, we had Santino Marella getting arrested by fake TSA officials for trying to hit the Cobra on a fake version of Barack Obama. Yeah, what a crazy world we live in. However, this pay-per-view was also notable for a variety of reasons, and it actually featured some key matches for WWE at the time. You had Alex Riley taking on The Miz, as his former protege was able to get the job done to the excitement of everyone in the building. You also had Randy Orton defeating Christian in a match for the World Heavyweight Championship, continuing their epic feud over the title, which honestly is one of my favorite feuds of that entire time period. And then you had to get to the main event. After R-Truth stole the WWE Championship on an episode of Raw, he was set to take on the real champion in John Cena. Instead, what I'll talk about is the match itself, with R-Truth playing a rather interesting heel at the time. With this being the closest he ever got to officially being a world champion in WWE, R-Truth actually kind of made the best of it. He went to ringside, stealing a hat and drink from a kid in the front row, and he even had a few close calls at actually beating Cena in the main event of the show. But of course, Cena would ultimately get the victory as the show faded to black, as Cena celebrated alongside US troops at ringside. Sure, R-Truth was never going to beat Cena, but his career around this time saw a bizarre uptick in success as he fought in the main event of a pay-per-view with John Cena. And even though CM Punk would ultimately cement his legacy in the coming weeks with a pipe bomb, this show would be a clear snapshot of the time. Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler opened the show, 2 names synonymous with the WWE's mid-card division around this time. Alex Riley, despite never getting that proper main event push, impressed many fans with his storyline with The Miz. Ezekiel Jackson and Wade Barrett fought over the IC title after a match featuring WWE's next top star on Raw and Alberto Del Rio. This pay-per-view was like a fever dream, a moment in time that perfectly captured what the WWE was like, down to the bizarre appearance of Barack Obama and the odd marketing of the event. However, with WWE now heading off into the new reality-based era, as I mentioned earlier, WWE really cooled their jets on the campiness of the late 2000s. Sure, you had some shows with insane names like Great Balls of Fire, like, dude, what even is that? But other than its name, the show itself was actually pretty good. The odd campiness of WWE slowly evaporated after the pipe bomb, with it only coming back in one-off bursts, like the House of Horrors match at Payback 2017, the Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin feud featuring dog food, and the god-awful Bobby Lashley's sister segment on Raw in 2018. These days, whenever WWE tries to experiment with an odd storyline or weird angle, it's usually countered by some amazing wrestling that does its best to make the whole thing make sense. However, even though WWE tries to experiment from time to time, that doesn't mean it's always a complete bust. Like we mentioned earlier, some of the ideas presented during these experimental pay-per-views, while funny to look back on in hindsight, had some intriguing ideas within them. Fatal 4-way matches are exciting, so having a pay-per-view around them could be interesting in theory. The idea of a submission-filled card could also be rather exciting if executed correctly. And while bringing in a Barack Obama impersonator was truly bizarre, there were still some funny moments in between some exciting matches that really embodied the company at the time. WWE isn't just a pro wrestling company. It's called sports entertainment, and while they may fail sometimes with the entertainment part of their branding, you can mostly find some interesting stuff even in their most experimental events. Different type of video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to go ahead and drop a like and subscribe for the next one.